Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from our Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin checking out our headlines. 77 new confirmed cases in Venezuela, of which 83% are imported, informed Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez on the Daily Brief. 73rd World Health Assembly takes place virtually for the first time due to Covid-19 pandemic. Morocco extends a state of emergency until June 10th, according to Prime Minister. We begin with our news. We begin with our news. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez offered an update on the number of coronavirus cases in the countries on the 24 hours daily brief.
En las últimas 24 horas debemos informar.
In the last 24 hours, 77 new cases have been detected, increasing the total number of COVID-19 cases in Venezuela to 618. 83% of these are imported.
De estos 77 casos nuevos,
out of the 77 new cases, 64 are imported cases, which represents 83% of the total. 47 arrived from Colombia, 44 entered through Táchira, 1 entered through Amazonas State, 1 entered through Zulia State, and 1 entered through Apure State. 4 others came from Brazil. They entered through the border post of Bolivar State. 8 came from Ecuador, and 8 entered through the border post of Táchira State, and 5 from Peru. They returned to Venezuela on the May 8th flight.
And also in Venezuela, the government revealed new evidence that directly links opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó to documents signed with U.S. security company Silver Corp. Vice President for Communications Jorge Rodriguez denounced the opposition lawmaker for continuously attacking national sovereignty and promoting foreign intervention. Rodriguez revealed more evidence that demonstrates the close relationship between U.S. President Donald Trump, Colombian President Iván Duque, and extremist Venezuelan opposition groups linked to Colombian drug traffickers. The Venezuelan vice president stressed that they continue to conspire against the country.
That's the criminal triangle that includes the U.S. administration, that includes Duque's government, that includes Juan Guaidó and his henchmen, and also includes notorious Colombian drug lords and at least one Venezuelan drug trafficker.
Moving on from topic, protesters in the city of El Alto in Bolivia blocked the main highway to demand food and democratic elections in Bolivia. Our correspondent Freddy Morales has more details. Welcome, Freddy.
We're in District 7 of the city of El Alto on the highway that connects to cities in the border with Peru. The neighbors here are demanding that the government gives them permission so that most business can operate and people can return to work. These are small business owners and they want authorities to ease restrictions after more than 50 days under lockdown. They say they have run out of money. They're also demanding a legitimate government, meaning an election in the next 90 days. Also, 1,000 workers and campesino associations have declared their communities in emergency. They're also denouncing acts of corruption by the government, the lack of COVID-19 testing kits, and UCI equipments for hospitals. There are also blockades in Cochabamba and in Potosí.
This Monday in Chile, hundreds of people took to the streets of Santiago de Chile despite the quarantine to denounce the lack of food in the city. President Sebastián Piñera decreed last Friday total quarantine in the capital without guaranteeing any economic or food aid to the people. But after 3 days of mandatory isolation, many left their homes to demand help. The protesters and that day mobilizations is not against quarantine or social isolation, but is more focused on the government lacks of assistance. In Haiti, opposition parties have called for their supporters to resume anti-government demonstrations in spite of the health emergency sparked by COVID-19 pandemic. In response to the call, a small group of protesters took to the street of Port-au-Prince, the capital, and they were met with riot police who urged people to comply with basic health provisions measures. The Caribbean nation has so far reported more than 500 COVID-19 cases and 21 deaths. The recent resignations of several experts in Peru have called into question the credibility of the Medical Specialists Advisory Committee assembled by the Health Ministry to address the COVID-19 pandemic. The latest resignation was the sixth submitted in recent days. The coordinator of the intensive care unit at the Guillermo Almenara Hospital, Dr. Rosa Lopez, said that her decision was based on the large number of doctors infected with COVID-19 due to a lack of protection and the false figures offered by the government on the number of cases. Peru is the second hardest hit nation in Latin America with almost 100,000 cases and over 2,000 fatalities according to official reports. Time for a first break. Remember, follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. We'll be right back. Health Assembly took place with world leaders convening virtually for the first time due to COVID-19 pandemic. The ambassador of Bahamas, Kiva Bain, was elected to be the presidency of the assembly.
We convened the 73rd Assembly during an unprecedented time in history when the global community is faced with negative health, social, and economic effects of the spread of the coronavirus. And the Assembly convened virtually, bringing together participants from across the globe. The public health community has faced challenges in the past. Global health issues transcend national boundaries and governments and call for action on the part of the global forces that determine the health of people.
As we request assistance to address COVID-19 in the Bahamas and in other small island states, we urge the international community to adopt and to appreciate a broader understanding of the developmental levels and the unique local circumstances in our states.
The Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, spoke about the situation in her country and in the Caribbean region.
Our CARICOM heads of government adopted a whole-of-government and a whole-of-society approach. In addition, we reached to our Caribbean neighbor Cuba and received hundreds of doctors and nurses to help us. I take this opportunity to thank our brothers and sisters in Cuba and the government of the Republic of Cuba in particular for its unswerving assistance during this pandemic. It has been palpable and clear to all of our population. So, our CARICOM family banded together to lock down and ride out this first wave. And it has been a long and treacherous wave. The closing of our borders and the trebling of unemployment and the reduction of our government revenues by half have created grave challenges for many of us. Similarly, the psyche of people in our hemisphere has been disturbed. For the majority of persons under the age of 70 in the Caribbean, many of whom have never had to confront grave challenges, the world appears to be on autopilot. They wonder who is in control and where is the leadership? Where is the global cooperation that they so expected? And for too many of our citizens globally, life has become a game of roulette, betting on numbers and colors and ignoring the science that needs to underpin our actions.
And Cuba's Minister of Public Health described the country's experience in fighting COVID-19, saying that the crisis turned into an opportunity for global solidarity. He said the United States blockade failed to stifle medical collaboration.
This was not prevented by the genocidal blockade imposed by the United States against Cuba, which had been cruelly stepped up, nor the attempts of the government of this country to discredit and hinder medical cooperation from Cuba. President, no country can face this crisis alone. There needs to be a world-level response based on unity, solidarity, and multilateral cooperation. Cuba reiterates to the WHO and its member states its willingness to cooperate and share our modest experience. Thank you.
Meanwhile, Venezuela's Health Minister Carlos Alvarado thanked the solidarity of the World Health Organization and the cooperation of China by providing medical supplies needed to battle the COVID-19 pandemic in the Bolivarian nation.
We thank humanitarian cooperation in solidarity of the World Health Organization and the United Nations system, China, Russia, Cuba, Iran, and other international organizations.
Alvarado also condemned the unilateral coercive measures imposed by the United States government that create difficulties for Venezuela to acquire health supplies.
It is necessary to reiterate our rejection of the crime being committed against the Venezuelan people through unilateral coercive measures, which have kidnapped our people and through which they have stolen over $30 billion, bank accounts frozen in the United States and Europe, generating difficulty in purchasing food and medicines.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said Africa is extremely vulnerable to COVID-19 and that it is the poor worldwide who suffer the most. He said all nations must have equal access to medical technologies and stressed the importance of international solidarity.
For its part, South Africa is participating in several research initiatives. We must ensure that there is equitable access to medical equipment, technologies in all respects. In this final decade towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, we must press ahead with our goal of making universal healthcare a reality for all the people of the world, and no one must be left behind. The virus has demonstrated the essential value of universal health coverage, and this is where we need full solidarity.
Moving on from topic, United States continues facing the worst consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, reporting more than 90,000 deaths. According to the latest data from Johns Hopkins University, the death toll has surpassed 90,300 deaths after recording 10,000 deaths in a single week, with over 1.5 million confirmed cases. President Donald Trump has continuously supported the lifting of restrictions despite the fact that the country has by far the highest figures of COVID-19 infections and deaths in the world. It's almost 1.5 million infected. Also, United States workers in the sanitary sector in New Orleans have gone on a strike to demand personal protective equipment and hazard pay amid COVID-19 pandemic. Garbage collectors are demanding paid sick leave, $16 per hour hazard pay as a written agreement from their employer stipulating that it will ensure safety measures according to Phase 1 guidelines. The workers say they are not going back down to protests, which they started early this month, until their demands are met.
You have begun something historical. My name is Chris. I'm with the New Orleans Workers Group. We are a group of workers who believe and know from the core of us that only the collective organizing of workers is going to liberate us from this oppressive white supremacist capitalist system. We understand that capitalism finds a way to trickle its way into all corners and pockets and nooks and crannies of our society, of our economy, of our being. That you can, yes, also be a black capitalist and exploit black workers. And that's a bit of what brought us out here today. We stand in solidarity with the City Waste Union. We are proud of these brothers, proud of these men, these fathers, these essential frontline workers, these heroes of our community who have been paving the path to a pandemic.
Time for another break, very short one, but remember you can find this and more news on our website, FtS4English.net. We'll be right back with more news. Back with our news, Morocco will extend its state of emergency until June 10th, according to Moroccan Prime Minister Saad Eddine Ould-Ahmadi.
Since our country has chosen from the outset to give priority to the preservation of the health of its citizens and to put it above all other considerations, and since we have made a lot of progress so far, and in order to preserve this progress, both in terms of epidemics and health, it has been decided to extend the state of health emergency and to extend the lockdown for a period of 3 weeks.
And Cuban doctors who are in South Africa to help the country fight COVID-19 have started working in various hospitals. The first group has already arrived in the northwest province, while the other medical experts are still finalizing orientation training on the South African situation before being deployed to other health facilities in the country.
Of the family physicians, 4 is allocated to the Bajanala districts and 2 to the Kenneth Kaunda district and 1 each to the RSM and NMM district. In Bajanala district, being the epicenter of our epidemic in Northwest Province, they will be distributed between the Rustenburg area and the Madibeng sub-district.
At least 20 civilians have been killed in a Boko Haram attack in a village northeast of Nigeria. According to security officials, the attackers invaded the village in several pickup trucks and fired rocket-propelled grenades on homes in Gahigana village. Boko Haram terrorist members have been targeting the area for the past 10 years, and more than 30,000 people have been killed in the insurgencies.
The Boko Haram started shooting sporadically before reaching the military camp. The aircraft arrived and fired them back. As a result, they just engaged in shooting sporadically into town. Up to now, we have evacuated about 25 people and we buried about 12. We cannot specify the figures left behind, but for these people, we brought them for an immediate treatment.
Campaigning for Burundi's general election goes into full swing. General Evariste Ndayishimiye will be the ruling party's candidate, replacing outgoing President Pierre Nkurunziza. The elections will be held on Wednesday. In Lesotho, a new premier will be sworn in on Tuesday after the Prime Minister party accepted his resignation. The Old Basotho Convention accepted the decision after Thomas Tabane said he was stepping down following months of pressures. He is accused of murdering his former wife in 2017, 2 days before he was sworn in as Prime Minister.
To announce today that one significant step into my retirement has been complemented.
70 primary schools in France have reported COVID-19 cases after the reopening of schools last Monday as part of the easing of restrictions measures. France's Education Minister Jean-Michel Blanquer announced that the 70 deaths are a low percentage after all education centers resumed activities last Monday, May 11th, including students of 6th grade and up who returned to the classrooms. A total of 40,000 education centers reopened doors within a week as part of the lifting of restrictions in France in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The government of United Kingdom announced the COVID-19 death toll has reached almost 35,000.
9,408 people are currently in hospital with coronavirus, which is down 13% from this time last week. And I'm very sad to report that of those who have tested positive for COVID-19 across all settings, 34,796 have now died. And that's an increase of 160 deaths on yesterday.
President Vladimir Putin was forced to intervene personally in Russia's North Caucasus region in Dagestan as local officials described the coronavirus situation there as a catastrophe. For several days now, there have been rumors of mounting fatalities that overwhelm hospitals, and local medical staff have taken to social media to make frantic appeals.
In recent days, the region's healthcare system has been under heavy pressure, despite the dedicated effort of doctors and nurses, and the number of tragic outcomes has been increasing, including among medical workers themselves.
But the problem is that these are only recorded cases of death in hospitals. Nobody keeps statistics of people who die from disease in their homes. They die, they are buried according to customs, and no one counts them.
And following the long-awaited formation of a new Israeli government, the European Union urged the country to avoid unilateral steps in the West Bank at the conclusion of a video conference of the European Union Foreign Affairs Ministers. European Union Minister Josep Borrell stated that any unilateral decision that would lead to the annexation of any occupied Palestinian territory will represent a violation of international law. Borrell, who congratulated the formation of the new Israeli government, stated he will support and facilitate negotiations between Israel and Palestine, adding that the European Union won't recognize any changes to the 1967 borders unless agreed upon by Israelis and Palestinians.
Until we succeed in stabilizing Libya.
Forces of the Libyan government of national accord have captured the strategic Al-Watiya air base from fighters loyal to General Khalifa Haftar. Military spokesman Mohamed Ennunu posted on his Twitter account that the government of national accord forces had taken over the entire base near the Tunisian border and seized large quantities of ammunition belonging to Haftar fighters. With this information, we come to the end of this news brief, but we leave you with this special video from China where we can see Wuhan residents gathered to dance in order to release worries and concerns brought to the city by the COVID-19 pandemic. With these images of life, of future, of celebration, we come to the end of this news brief. Thank you for being with us.
暂停。